Today we're going to talk about 15 hikes in Sedona, Arizona. Now, I have done all these hikes myself. This is my footage. My GPS in Sedona looks like a spider's web. So I'm going to throw in my experiences, but also some of my personal opinions about these trails. Take those with a grain of salt. People like different things, but I'm going to say what I think about it. Last thing before we get started, if you hike these trails, or any trails really, make sure you practice leave no trace. You want to leave the wilderness the exact same way that you found it. You want it left like that when you get there, and you want to leave it like that for others. All right, let's get started. I know this might be more professional if I had memorized all this, but this is a lot of statistics, so I'm gonna read. So up first, we have Boynton Canyon. Vehicle-wise, any vehicle can make it there. I would put the level at beginner to intermediate, depending on your destination. Challenges are slight wayfinding, which I'll come to later. Difficulty, pretty easy. Conditions, full sun exposure, no water. And if you're going to the Boynton Canyon subway cave, the stats are about 7 miles and around 1,000 feet of elevation gain and loss. It's an out and back hike. So you go up into the valley and then you come back out the way you came. The Boynton Canyon Trail itself, it's beautiful. It starts out by a resort, so you're not really that wilderness feel, but the further you go into the canyon, the more wilderness experience you get. But odds are, if you're going into Boynton Canyon and watching this video, your destination is the Boynton Canyon subway cave. The subway cave is not on the official trail. There's a turnoff. I have a video that explains how to get there. But this is why I was talking about the wayfinding. You need to know where this turnoff is, and you need to know how to follow that trail, because there are a few social trails that go off in different directions. I've seen people, probably more people than anywhere else in Sedona, that got off of this trail and were lost wandering around the canyon trying to figure out how to get to the subway cave. It's so popular nowadays, if you stop and wait for 5 minutes, you're gonna see other people come along. Don't really advocate for following other people to a destination in the wilderness because you don't know their experience. Do your homework, have your route marked, learn how to read a GPS or something similar, and just be prepared to be self-sufficient. Assuming you're going to the subway cave, it looks like this. Beautiful location, great views from the cave, and right around the corner there are Native American ruins. Now I do have to add, if you're around Native American ruins, make sure you know how to treat them. If you don't know how to treat them, just don't touch anything. These ruins in particular, the petroglyph has been scratched over. It is really faded because of all the oil from people's hands. They touch the petroglyph and that makes it fade. And somebody somewhat recently kicked down one of the walls of the ruins. So if you go there, practice leave no trace. Respect the site, leave it the way you found it. Regardless of what your destination is, if you're going to Sedona, absolutely worth checking out Boynton Canyon. So the next one we're going to talk about is the Wind Caves, also known as the Raven Caves. Any vehicle can make it. It's actually a pull-off right off of the main drive going through Sedona. It is a beginner hike with an asterisk that I'll come to later. The challenges are exposure and parking. Difficulty is easy. Conditions, there's full sun, there's no water, but it's only about a half-mile hike there and then a half-mile back, so maybe a mile total, negligible elevation gain. I do want to say though, I shouldn't say only a half mile. If you're gonna hike here, I see this all the time online where people are saying, hey, I'm going to Sedona for my first time in July, and what should I hike? Nothing. You should hike to the pool in your hotel in July. It's super hot, so even a half mile needs to be taken seriously. Ideal hiking conditions in Sedona are from October through April or May. Once you get May all the way to September, it's hot and you have to have experience hiking in a desert condition to stay somewhat safe. I still get myself into trouble out here in the summertime, and I've been doing this for a long time now. So if you go there, make sure you take precautions to keep safe if you're there in the heat. Anyway, back to the Wind Caves. I've driven past the parking lot for the Wind Caves dozens, maybe hundreds of times and not even known it was there. It's not marked, it's not paved. It's just a little gravel pull-off that will accommodate maybe 4 cars. Honestly, I think that's a good thing, because if it wasn't, because of its situation right in town, this thing would just be flooded with people. So the plus is, if you can find a parking spot, it won't be super crowded for you. The minus is, it's tough to find a parking spot. The hike itself, very short, don't even need to talk about it, but it comes to this cave system that it was really cool. I didn't expect anything from this hike, and it was really interesting. The cave went back much further than I expected. Absolutely worth stopping by and checking it out. However, there are a couple of sections where there's some exposure. So one spot in particular, if you don't step just perfectly, you're gonna get hurt a lot. It's not difficult, it's not technical, but I wouldn't bring, toddlers or people that have mobility issues on this hike. And even a fear of heights, that it's probably not a great idea. There is that one spot. You can still go down to there, and if you just don't like it, turn around and come back out the way you came. But that's what the asterisk was for. Next one up is the Hangover Trail. For vehicle access, any vehicle can make it, but if you don't have it doesn't have to be high clearance, but at least a 4-wheel drive, you're gonna have to park in the paved lot. That's gonna add around 2 to 2.5 miles to your hike, but you can still do it if you don't have that vehicle. Ideally, you can drive up Schnebley Hill Road, which is this bumpy but pretty road, and park it like the Cowpies trailhead. I'm not giving an exact trailhead because this is a loop hike. There's several different areas you can go in. So that all depends on your vehicle and just your mood at the time and what your plans are. And for statistics, it is 5 miles if you can get up Schnebley Road with a 4-wheel drive, around 600 feet of elevation gain and loss. If you don't have that 4-wheel drive, it's gonna add about 2 miles to that. It's a very unique hike. It's actually a mountain biking trail that's extremely difficult. It's like, I don't know what their hardest one is, double black diamond, triple black diamond. I'm not a mountain biker, but this is about as high a level as you can get in difficulty. So if you go, keep that in mind and keep your eyes peeled for mountain bikers, because you don't want to round a corner not paying attention and send one of them careening off a cliff. That's the thing about the Hangover Trail, is exposure. There are several sections where the trail's not very wide. The rocks kind of hang over the top, which is how the trail got its name. And off to the side is just a sheer cliff. So if you're afraid of heights, this may not be a trail for you. It's not really sketchy, but it is something that you want to keep in mind. Another unique feature here is a lot of this hike is on the slick rock. And for wayfinding, what they do here is they just paint these white dots on the slick rock. So if you're hiking this, you can almost always see the next white dot ahead of you, but you want to keep an eye out for those, because when you're on the slick rock, there's no defined trail. You're just walking on a rock. Other than that, you can see the views in the video. It's amazing. This is one of my favorite hikes in Sedona. All right, next one up is Capitol Butte, also known as Thunder Mountain. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the summit hike. There are trails that go around it, but this one is up to the top. As far as access, any vehicle can make it. Level, I would say this is an advanced hike. You need some experience, backcountry wayfinding, and a little bit of scrambling experience. Challenges, wayfinding, scrambling, and isolation, because it is not nearly as popular as some of the other hikes. So if you get yourself in trouble, you may have to wait a while before somebody comes by. Which also reminds me, if you do this type of thing, it's not a bad investment to have a personal locator beacon, something that has satellite signal that you can signal for help if you get into trouble. Anyway, back to Capitol Butte. Difficulty level, this is a difficult hike. It is a 3-mile out and back, go to the summit, come back down the way you came, and about 1,700 feet of elevation gain and then loss on that 3 miles. So really steep hike. But the payoff for that effort is it's fun. I mean, I like these more challenging, spicy, scrambling type of hikes, and the views at the top are absolutely amazing. It's accessed from the parking lot that's the same as the Devil's Bridge parking lot. So it's right off of a paved road in a paved parking lot. I will add that it's not as easy to find this route online. And I'm not going to put a lot of detail in here, because if you can't search this route and find it online and mark it on your GPS, you probably shouldn't attempt it, because again, it's more advanced and pretty difficult. I don't want anybody going out and getting into trouble. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying you want to have that experience level built up before you attempt it. Regardless, Thunder Mountain, Capitol Butte, amazing hike, gorgeous views, great challenge. Next up, we have the A.B. Young Trail. Any vehicle can make it there. It's paved all the way. Experience level would be, I consider it intermediate. The challenges are full sun exposure. There's a stream crossing at the beginning and lots and lots of switchbacks. Difficulty level, I would put this at difficult because it is a 5-mile hike out and back. So 2.5 miles each way and right around 2,000 feet of elevation gain in that 2.5 miles. So this trail starts going up from the parking lot and it doesn't stop going up until you're at the top at East Pocket. If you've watched any of my other videos where I talk about or hike the A.B. Young Trail, I complain a lot about it. I am not a fan. There's something like 27 or I don't know. There's a lot of switchbacks on it and the views aren't that great. Looking at the video, I kind of feel embarrassed to say the views aren't that great because these are not bad views by any stretch of the imagination. But when you compare it to the Red Rock views of Sedona, that's a high bar. I've kind of softened over the years to the A.B. Young Trail. It's still kind of niche to me. It's something that if I was coming from out of town and never been to Sedona, I wouldn't do it. But it is great for exercise and it leads to East Pocket, which is also referred to as Edge of the World or End of the World. Great overlook to Sedona. Will note that there's a lot of walking from East Pocket to get to where those views are. If you go up that way, you can actually drive up to Edge of the World from Flagstaff, but during the wintertime, those roads get closed, so your only way to get up there then would be the A.B. Young Trail. I've kind of started to like it because it leads to some of the most amazing technical slot canyons that I've ever done. It's not the journey on this one so much as the destination. If you're not doing one of those things that I just said, might not be the trail for you. One last thing to add, when you start on this trail, it's so weird because it comes off the parking lot and it goes right into the creek. There's no crossing, there's not well-placed boulders or logs that you can get across. Every time I've done it, I thought there was a 50-50 chance of me ending up in the creek. Keep that in mind if you want to do it. When you walk up and say, where did the trail go? This is just a creek, you got to cross it. So next up we have West Fork, one of my favorite trails in Sedona. Now, any vehicle can get there. Experience level is beginner. Challenge is slight wayfinding. Difficulty's easy. The conditions are shaded and it's alongside a creek that always has water in it. Statistics, the maintained trail is 3 miles out, 3 miles back, so a total of 6 miles. Only a couple hundred feet of elevation gain and loss, so not much of that. And it is an out and back trail. I love this trail. It's so different than what you normally think of when you think of Sedona. It's not these big desert red rock views. It is this deep canyon with very high walls and this constantly running stream, trees, shade, just an oasis. Love West Fork. I don't know why, but people are always commenting about the stream crossings. There's something like 13 times that you have to cross the stream to get to the end of the trail. The stream's not that deep and there are rocks, people put logs across it. It's not difficult to keep your feet dry. And really the highest punishment for error is you're gonna get wet shoes, which isn't the end of the world. So if you're worried about stream crossings, don't worry about them. It's a great place to bring kids, beginner hikers. You don't have to go very far before you get good scenery and can hang out down by the creek. Relax, it's not super hot. You can hike this one during the summer. And a little bit of a tip here, when you get to the end of the trail, it just has a sign that says end of trail, and then it has a section that looks like the Zion subway. It's hollowed out from water from thousands of years. Keep going. Go in like another 200-300 yards, and there's just amazing scenery. Maybe getting your feet wet isn't such a bad thing. Next up is Cathedral Rock. Vehicle-wise, any vehicle will get there. Level is beginner. Challenge is just some mild scrambling. Difficulty's easy. Conditions are full sun exposure, there's no water. Trail stats, about 1.5 miles, 600 feet of elevation gain, and then loss coming back out. It's an out and back hike. It is one of the more iconic and popular hikes in Sedona. It's so popular, in fact, that pretty much every time I go to Sedona, there is a guy sitting out at the main road on the turnoff road to Cathedral Rock parking with a little umbrella and a sign that says parking lot full. Go on a side tangent here. Sedona is just not set up for the tourism that it receives. They are limited in the geography on how wide a road they can get through town, so they only have this 2-lane road, and it's just overwhelmed by popularity. To try and combat that, they have started this shuttle system. I believe it's free. Unfortunately, I haven't taken it myself. I'm pretty sure that the Cathedral Rock Trail is one of the trails that this shuttle services. So if you're gonna go, just realize parking may be an issue and you may have to look for a shuttle to take you there. As far as the trail, it's fairly straightforward. It does have some sections that are very steep. I've only done it once and that was in the snow, so I can't really say what it's like under normal conditions, but it had a little bit of scrambling to it when I went. Nothing too difficult, nothing technical or to be worried about. But when you get to the top, if you've seen this picture of the end of trail sign, that's where this picture's taken. Another side note is if you're looking at that end of trail sign and you look over to your right, there is an area where people will walk out and take this iconic shot, which I don't have because I didn't do it. A lot of them take engagement photos and stuff like that. If you're looking for those two pictures, Cathedral Rock Trail is where you find them. Next one is Secret Canyon. If you want to get to the trailhead, you're going to need a high clearance 4-wheel drive. The level I would say is intermediate just because of its remoteness. Challenges, wayfinding, water, isolation. Difficulty is easy to intermediate. Conditions at the beginning, it is full sun exposure. Usually no water, although there is a creek that runs through this that does have water sometimes. Once you get further back in, you get in the pine trees and you have some shade. Stats are going to vary depending on where you start and where you stop. I don't know how far it goes back in there. I think it might actually go up to the top and link up with another trail. I believe it's the Secret Mountain Trail. But the way I've done it is as an out and back. So a couple of unique things about Secret Canyon. It is another one of those shaded areas. It looks kind of like West Fork, much more than it looks like the Red Rock areas of Sedona. It's a great backpacking destination, especially if the creek is running. You might actually even catch a small waterfall out there that's right off the trail. It's a hidden oasis. I've had incredible backpacking trips back there, but if you don't have the 4-wheel drive high clearance vehicle, I can't really recommend it. My wife and I tried one of our first hikes in Sedona was Secret Canyon, and we started at the Devil's Bridge parking area, hiked several miles down Dry Creek Road, basically got all the way to the mouth of Secret Canyon and it was so hot and we were tired and that hike along Dry Creek Road sucks. Turned around, headed back with no idea what we were missing up inside the canyon. If you don't have the high clearance 4-wheel drive, might not be worth it to you. But if you do, it's a great spot to check out. Next up is Robber's Roost. Getting tired of squinting here. The vehicle to get to Robber's Roost, any vehicle will make it, but if you want to get all the way to the trailhead, cut a couple of miles off the hike, you want a high clearance 4-wheel drive. There is a lot of driving on dirt roads. They're not that bad, but if it's raining or something, snow, something like that, I wouldn't try it. Difficulty level is beginner to intermediate, with the challenges being wayfinding. The hike itself is super easy. It is 1 mile with only like 100 feet elevation gain. It can be up to 4 miles if you don't have the vehicle to get there. Out and back hike. And the reason to do this is the destination. The views along the way are okay, but they're not incredible. It's further out of town than any other hike that I'm talking about, but it has this really interesting cave at the end of the hike that has some Native American ruins and this very interesting round hole in the rock. It must have made for a really cool window back in the day. Yeah, not much else to say about this hike. See what the destination looks like. Really interesting, worth checking out if you have time. Next one up, Wilson Mountain. Vehicle access, any vehicle can get there. Difficulty level would be intermediate to advanced. Challenges, wayfinding, very strenuous, no water. Would rate this as difficult. Conditions, mostly full sun exposure, especially on the South Trail. North Trail has more shade. Stats are, it's about 6 miles out and back to the peak and back for the South Trail, 4.5-ish miles out and back from the North Trail. But in those miles, you have about 2,200 feet of elevation gain. It's difficult to give all of these statistics because it depends on where your destination is. There's a north overlook, there's a south overlook. You can go to both of them, you can go to one of them. My wife and I went and backpacked it. We started at the North Trail, hiked up to the top, camped out, went to the north and south overlooks, and then hiked back down the South Trail, got in our car, shuttled back to the other car, we both drove up. Awesome trip. I have some really good memories from Wilson Mountain. Another time we came out there and started at a light rain on the North Wilson Mountain Trail. By the time we got up to the summit, it was a complete whiteout. The South Trail, I feel like, has the better views. It's facing Sedona, so you get those red rock views. It doesn't have a lot of trees, so you can see further, but it's got full sun exposure. So that part can be a little brutal depending on when you go. The North Trail is facing the opposite direction. It has more wooded views, and it does have some burn damage, although there's still stands of trees that give you some shade and some relief on that side. In patches though, because the forest hasn't fully recovered. But regardless of which trail you take, one of the high points, if not the high point, is the South Overlook, which has these amazing views. Wilson Mountain, no matter how you want to tackle it, it's going to be challenging, but it's worth it. So next up is Bear Mountain. You can get any vehicle there. It's paved all the way to the parking lot. Experience level, I would put it intermediate. Challenges are some mild wayfinding, and it's strenuous. Difficulty, I would label this as difficult. It's one of the harder hikes in Sedona. Stats here are about 4.5 miles, 1,900 feet of elevation gain. It is an out and back hike. You climb up to the summit of Bear Mountain, back down to your car. Yeah, it's just a challenging hike that has some good views along the way. This is where I differ from popular opinion because Bear Mountain is a really well-liked hike in Sedona. Personally, I don't like it that much. The views are good partway up. They get better a little bit of the way up, but on the summit, you can't look towards Sedona. You're looking out west away from Sedona. So you don't get those red rock views that you do from like a Wilson Mountain South Overlook or Cathedral Butte, Thunder Mountain, that sort of thing. Take that with a grain of salt because everybody loves this trail. Some people who really like to go above and beyond will combine it with Doe Mountain across the street and do both of them in a single day. I have done a technical canyoneering route off of Bear Mountain called Grizzly, and it goes down the east side of the mountain, gives you incredible views of Sedona, but just the standard hiker's route, you just don't get to see that side as much. The other thing about Bear Mountain is there is a false summit. You think you're at the top, you're not at the top. It's kind of soul crushing to get to that point and you think, yay, I made it, and no, you haven't. You've still got a ways to go. Not a personal favorite of mine, but don't let that deter you. Popular opinion says I'm wrong. Next up is Soldier Pass. I'm going to say any vehicle can make it, but there are a lot of different ways to come in and tackle this trail, so it might depend on where you start. I just gone in from a couple of different ways, and any vehicle could make it to those parking lots, but you're going to have to do your own homework to know if your car will get there, depending on which way you're going in. I would put the level of this at a beginner, nothing too difficult about it. Challenges are going to be wayfinding because there's a lot of trails that you can link up with out here, so you need to know what your route is and how to find it. Difficulty is easy. It could be harder if you loop it together and make a really, really long trail out of it. So yeah, that may not have been super helpful, but anyway, I will hit on a couple of the highlights on this trail. The first being 7 sacred pools. It's right off the trail, hard to miss. Good place to hang out, especially if the pools have some water in them and you're there at sunset or sunrise. The next thing that you want to probably check out is the Soldier Pass Cave. Now that is off the main trail. It's not a designated trail to get to it. You can see it from the main trail. So it's something that you'll want to do homework, find out where the turnoff is to get up there, and just keep an eye out for it. I really enjoyed it. My wife and I went there, and it's fairly easy to get to. There's a little bit of elevation gain to get up to it. It gets steep in a couple of spots, but really no exposure, no technical climbing or anything like that. And it's just really cool. I use the word cool way too often, but it's cool. Soldier Pass, another classic route in Sedona. Lots of different things you can do on that trail and different places that you can see, but those are the two main ones that most people go to. Next up is the Huckaby Trail. Any vehicle is going to get you there. Difficulty level, this is a beginner trail. This is another one that's good for little kids. Challenges, there's a couple of stream crossings. Difficulty, easy. It's a 3-mile hike, but it's a through hike. It's not an out and back. It actually goes from Midgley Bridge, which is the same parking area as the South Trail for Wilson Mountain, and it goes all the way through to Dry Creek Road, where you would park for the Hangover Trail if you don't have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. I did it as an out and back. I didn't get all the way to Dry Creek Road because honestly, Huckaby Trail, the views are not incredible. So hear me out on this. You're down in the valley, and if you've ever driven the 89A through Sedona, it goes all the way through the valley and comes out up at Flagstaff. The Huckaby Trail is down in there. You park at Midgley Bridge, and you hike under the bridge into this beautiful canyon. That part I found really, really interesting. I like that. Then you hike down and go to Oak Creek, where you have access to the water, and this is where it's really a good place that you could take little kids. You could get down there, you could have them play in the creek or whatever. But after that, it just kind of follows the 89A, and you're never out of line of sight of the road and all the traffic. You can hear all the traffic. And the further you go, you head towards Sedona, so you have all these houses and businesses, and it just doesn't have the great views along that section, and it wasn't really worth it, in my opinion, to go beyond the creek. I know that doesn't sound good, but I just don't know that I would hike from Oak Creek on the Midgley Bridge side all the way through to Dry Creek Road. Definitely worth stopping over. You get Midgley Bridge. Even if you just go under the bridge, there's a nice overlook that gives you great views, and you don't have to go down to the creek, but there is the creek access there as well. Nice little trail, but you do want to have your expectations set accordingly. If you hike the full 3 miles out and then 3 miles back, you're probably going to be disappointed with about 5.5 of those miles. Next up is the Berthen Cave. There's a couple of different ways you can get in there, but I came off of, I think it was Long Canyon Road, and any vehicle could make it from that trailhead. Experience level would be beginner. Challenges, there really isn't any challenge. Difficulty is easy. It's a 2 mile from where I parked off of Long Canyon Road out and back, 230 feet of elevation gain. Quite bluntly, the hike to the Berthen Cave itself, I found unremarkable. There's not a lot of footage. It wasn't super scenic, but the cave itself, definitely worth checking out. Great views from up inside it. And it used to be like, that was the go-to picture spot several years ago in Sedona. It has since been replaced by the Subway Cave, but the Berthen Cave is still very interesting. Yeah, not much else to say about that one. Very short hike, but a very interesting destination that makes it worth it. Okay, last but not least, Devil's Bridge. Vehicle-wise, this is also on Dry Creek Road. If you don't have a high clearance 4-wheel drive, you're gonna have to park and walk an extra 2.5 miles. If you do have a high clearance 4-wheel drive, there is a smaller dirt parking lot. You can cut the hike down to about 1.5 miles. There is around 500 feet of elevation gain. Experience level, I would put it beginner. Challenges are, I wrote down the picture line. I'll come back to that. Difficulty is easy, and then the stats are going to vary depending on your vehicle. So, Devil's Bridge, I have a very unpopular opinion on this one. When I went, I overslept. That's on me, that's my fault. But when I got there, there was a line waiting to take that picture. I would estimate I would have been there an hour to an hour and a half before I would have gotten out there. I ended up leaving. I didn't want to wait, and hiking by myself, it's tough to take a picture anyway. But you know, the atmosphere was really kind of cool. I mean, everybody was cheering each other on. It was positive vibes. They were being nice, respectful, and having a good time. As much as I want to complain, and I still want to complain now about all the people, somebody once said to me, you're just part of the crowd. So you can't really complain about the other people if you're out there with them. The best that we can do is show a mutual respect for each other, treat the people on the trail the way you want to be treated, and the same goes for the wilderness itself. Have respect for it. You love it, I love it. We're out here checking these places out because this is what we want to do, and we want to see these amazing places. Let's work together and keep them that way. Anyway, thanks for watching. That's all I've got. It's 15 places to hike in Sedona. Hopefully you found the video helpful. If you do want additional information, I have individual videos for most of these hikes. I'll put links down in the description. You can check that out. And yeah, we're done here.